Hi, this is Jason from Horrific Nightmares, and I'm back to do another episode of About Last Nightmare, where me and my friend Nick, the Last Shoegazer, view a film at the same time from our collection, and I do part one of the review, so to speak, where I give basically the facts and figures, and he does part two, which um, encompasses the synopsis and the overall review and ranking, or rating rather. So, this week is a special week for me. It is a week where we get to do Happy Birthday to Me. Now, I also have the Mill Creek double feature Blu-ray, which comes with When a Stranger Calls, the original. I had to think about that one for a minute. The transfer of both on the Mill Creek double feature Blu-ray is outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. But I haven't watched my Anchor Bay in quite some time, which I did last night with Nick, and was very surprised that this also is pretty outstanding. Not that I'm surprised. I mean, Anchor Bay does good work. So, but this is one of my favorite films of all time. I do have a history with this film. This was the first real horror film I saw in my life when I was about 10 or 11 or so, somewhere around that area. Um, I went to at a sleepover at a friend's house. There was three of us. Um, Parents said we could go to the video store and pick out something to watch. And, looking at all the covers and deciding which ones we wanted to, or deciding which one we wanted to watch, we picked Happy Birthday to Me, based on the cover and the original tagline, which is not on the cover of this. The original tagline was 6 of the most bizarre murders you will ever see. And it definitely lives up to it. And this is actually a little bit longer than a typical slasher, but I'll get into that in a few minutes when I do my facts and figures and all. But, being able to introduce this to a good friend, Nick, was worth the price of admission alone. I do love this film, and I'll get into a few things about it. A few of the things that we talked about, which I'm sure he will also. But, after you're done with this part of the review, definitely go and check out The Last Shoegazer for part two. So, Happy Birthday to Me is a 1981 film that runs 111 minutes and is directed by the late J. Lee Thompson, who unfortunately passed away on August 20th of 2002 due to congestive heart failure at the age of 88. Now, I did a review for another one of his films, which is 10 to Midnight, which is also one of my favorites. And I do consider that a slasher as well. But he did so many great films. He worked with Charles Bronson a lot, which of course he starred in with 10 to Midnight. He also did St. Ives with Charles Bronson, The Evil That Men Do, which is also a good film, Murphy's Law, Death Wish 4, The Crackdown, which is okay, Messenger of Death, and Kahingiti, Forbidden Subjects. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But he also did Firewalker with Chuck Norris and Lou Gossett Jr., and my favorite Planet of the Apes film, which is Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and he also did Battle for the Planet of the Apes. So, I mean, this guy was just a legendary director. And one of the things I told Nick when we were watching the film last night is this film, to me, has a lot of street cred. Not only the director, and you can definitely tell in the quality of the film, but in the acting as well. Now, this movie stars Melissa Sue Anderson, and if that sounds familiar, she was on Little House on the Prairie. Now, she was also in another horror movie that I do own, but I don't remember her being in it, but I've only watched it once. It was Crazy Eights, which was one of the 8 Films to Die For, I think series 2, if I'm not mistaken. But when I was looking up her information, I also was pretty impressed to find out that she did the voice work for Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. She played Kitty Pryde, or Sprite, from which they called her. She was in 2 of the episodes, Origin of the X-Men, and I can't remember the other name of the episode. But she also was in the X-Men animated series, where she voiced Snowbird. So I thought that stuff was pretty interesting because I love comic books. You guys know that about me by now. So I thought that was pretty cool. So you had Melissa Sue Anderson, which was a notable name at the time for Little House on the Prairie, but you also had Glenn Ford in this film, which, he's a famous actor. Most of you probably know him from Superman, where he played Pa Kent, Superman's earthly father. But I mean, he did all kinds of stuff. Um, he has a really interesting resume. He was in the original 3:10 to Yuma, The Fastest Gun Alive. He did some westerns. He did some murder mysteries. He did some dramas and stuff like that. He was also in one that I have actually never seen, but always heard my mother and my father talk about this one a lot. I guess it was popular before my time. It was called The Courtship of Eddie's Father. I don't know if anybody has seen that. But he was also in a very strange movie, which unfortunately when I was younger I turned off because it was a little too weird for me. But I do want to revisit it. It's called The Visitor, which is quite a strange film. So this guy had, you know, acting chops. Unfortunately, he did pass away on August the 30th of 2006 at the age of 90 from a stroke. But, I mean, when I told Nick that this had street cred, that's kind of what I meant by it. Some of the things that we talked about, to me, this plays very much like a giallo. Um, it's more of a murder mystery, and of course, which he's probably going to say in his review, um, I told him that this has a lot of red herrings in it, and he didn't know what that meant. And I explained to him that, red herring is someone who they kind of make it seem as the murderer, but is not. So, I thought that was pretty cool. You know, like I said, to me, this plays very much like a giallo, just an American one or Canadian, because I think this was done. I'm not sure if this was one of the Canadian tax shelter movies, but I don't know. If anybody knows, definitely comment below. But yeah, I'm rambling on this one. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and definitely my first, real horror movie. So, you know, I, this has a lot of sentimental value in my opinion. But anyway, tune in to Nick, the Last Shoegazer, for part 2 of this review, where he will break down the synopsis of the film and give his thoughts and our overall rating on the film. Yeah, definitely check out his part. And if you like what you see and hear, hit that like button and subscribe. And until next time, peace.